unchangeable. It's not that my nature is influenced or changed or transformed by contact with this world. It's just I am impartial. And the example given in the next verse is, if you look into the purport that Prabhupada says, in the middle of the purport, for example, the rains are not responsible for different types of vegetation that appear on the earth, although without such rains there's no possibility of vegetative growth. We discussed this example in this section, and it was that if every piece of land has a particular type of crop in it, now the crops vary, and the rain has got nothing to do with the type of crop that exists. It impartially, falls on fertile land where there's good crops, or fertile land where there are not so useful crops, or in the ocean, or on barren land. But depending on the quality of the seed that's present, there's a particular plant that appears. Similarly, all of us, the seeds refer to our impressions, the impressions we've carried across several lifetimes. So Krishna just provides his acceptance or his will, and everything else grows, but based on our own conditioning, our own impressions and desires. The same point was also made in chapter 5. But Krishna's emphasizing it here. Now, this statement has different effects in the first 6 chapters and in the middle 6 chapters. Although this point was made in the first 6 chapters, it was made for the Nishkama Karma Yogi, because he himself is trying to transcend the influence of this world. So seeing how Krishna is acting in a detached way in this world gives him the inspiration to understand, okay, here is a personality I can connect to, and therefore myself act in a detached way with respect to this world. Understanding Krishna's quality of indifference or detachment with respect to this world allows the practitioner to imbibe a similar quality of detachment or indifference to external results. But for the devotee, it has a different effect. The same knowledge, but for a devotee, they understand that actually it means that Krishna is separate, and I can worship him through a sadhana that is separate from this world, that is not of this world. Okay, text 9. So actually Prabhupada comments on this avasham. He says at the end of this purport to text 8, it is clearly indicated here by the word avasham that the living entities have nothing to do with the process. The state of being in their past life, in the past creation, is simply manifested again, and all of this is simply done by His will. This is the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After creating different species of life, He has no connection with them. The creation takes place to accommodate the inclinations of the various living entities, and so the Lord does not become involved with it. Text 9. Nachamam tani karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya udhasinavad asinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Translation. So the same point is repeated and emphasized. Or you can say that it is the conclusion drawn from the previous verses that we've been describing. And Prabhupada gives an example later on in this purport. He says, this neutrality, this is further down on page 388, this neutrality is mentioned here with the word udasinavat. Although he has control over every minute detail of material activities, he is sitting as if neutral. The example can be given of a high court judge sitting on his bench. By his order, so many things are happening. Someone is being hanged, someone is being put into jail, someone is awarded a huge amount of wealth. But still, he, the judge, is neutral. He has nothing to do with all that gain and loss. Similarly, the Lord is always neutral, although He has His hand in every sphere of activity. In the Vedanta Sutra, it is stated, Vaishamya naigrinye na. He is not situated in the dualities of this material world. He is transcendental to these dualities. Nor is He attached to the creation and annihilation of this material world. The living entities take their different forms in the various species of life according to their past deeds. And the Lord does not interfere with them. So sometimes people do... Sorry? Mm-hmm. That is answered later on. So if you look further down, it is answered in the verse Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. So that is verse text 29. Krishna will answer that. So some people tend to ask, well, if Krishna is truly neutral, I mean, if he has nothing to do with the material world, does he not have a personal desire in creating the material world? I mean, why has he created it in the first place? It's a natural question that people will ask. Well, there are a few answers to this question. The first one is to facilitate our enjoyment. It's not that he gets involved in the intricate details of what we do, and he's influenced or affected by it. It's kind of like if someone is sitting at the edge of a sports match and is cheerleading someone, or it's not like that. He's someone who creates a stadium. Okay, now what you want to do, you do. He's not personally involved in the activities within the stadium itself. People will either get, like a red card, or they will be celebrated depending on their activities there. And that's a neutral judgment. Anyone who violates a certain rule gets a certain penalty. Anyone who performs to a certain standard gets a particular result. But he's the one who facilitates the stadium because it is a desire of living entities to exert their independence separately from him. But Krishna also creates the material world for two reasons. One, this is mentioned in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. One, to allow living entities to experience this world according to their desire. He's facilitating their experience, is the first answer. The second, he designs the material world in such a way so that people come back to him. If you think about, for example, why have we received a body that is subject to diseases? If we live a lifestyle that is unhealthy. If you look at all the items of what an unhealthy life constitutes, it's a lifestyle in the mode of passion and ignorance. Someone who lives a balanced lifestyle, balanced food, balanced exercise, balanced sense of awakening, balance in spiritual life, and balance in material life according to Krishna's instructions, they get good health. So the question is, why has Krishna designed a system like this? If he truly wants us to experience this world completely, why doesn't he just allow us to just express ourselves the way we want it to be? Why can't it be that I can eat how much ever I want, whatever I want, and I will never gain weight? That would be good, right? Why does it have to be that, if I, go out into the rain, or I have multiple partners, that I get particular diseases? It doesn't seem like I'm being constrained. It doesn't seem, if Krishna really, some people actually have this argument, if Krishna is really God, then he should have given us complete independence to do whatever we want, however we want. Of course, if he gives independence to one living entity, you're basically saying, why doesn't Krishna make me God? And everyone else has to kind of circle their life around me. So that means for one person he's allowed to make them God, but for everyone else they have to support this one God. The other part of this is, well, why can't Krishna make everyone, equal? Why can't he just make a situation where everything is happy, everyone can fulfill their desires? Well, because Krishna is like a parent. There's no sensible parent a parent would facilitate their children's desires, even though they're not personally, they don't personally dictate their inclinations. They try and train them. They try and facilitate their inclinations, but in such a way that they will have to grow and become mature people who know where real happiness lies. Yes, children want to play all day long, or play soccer or cricket, for example, and parents will put them in clubs and play with them themselves. But beyond a certain point, they will say, no, you cannot play cricket until you finish your homework or you finish your studies, because they know that this path for the child will just make them miserable, even if the child in that particular level of consciousness is not cognizant of this fact. Similarly, Krishna as a father, or as our mother and father, he creates an environment in this world where there are constraints. We are forced when we deviate from his lifestyle, we get certain diseases or certain repercussions from people in society, that we are forced to become much more balanced, and start to live a lifestyle in the mode of goodness. Start to live a lifestyle as he has prescribed it in the Vedas. And this is actually the deepest understanding of what health is. Health is Krishna's way of allowing us to regulate our body according to his instructions, so that we live a lifestyle that is favorable to come to him. Even our karma has this understanding. The deepest understanding of karma is it's Krishna's plan for every individual, so that they learn the lessons they're supposed to learn. They benefit from the good things that they've done, like incentivized to come to a lifestyle that is conducive to approach him. And that's Krishna's facilitation. So Krishna has the desire, Prabhupada would say, that everyone come back to him. He's not so if our children like, playing around with dolls or playing around with cricket, we don't so much mind that difference. But if they play with dolls to the extent that something is compromised, then we do mind. And we bring them into, back into shape. And that's what Krishna does. So in text 10, Krishna is going to summarize this section. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetuna nena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. Translation.
This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule is manifestations created and annihilated again and again.
So Maya Adhya Akshena. Akshena means I. Aksha means I. Adhi Akshena. So it means like super I. Adhi means like super, or it's above. So it is like the way Prabhupada is translated is by superintendence, by supervision. Maya adhyakshena prakriti, under my supervision, under my superintendence. This material nature, it manifests both the moving and non-moving living entities. This material world, Krishna is saying, has no power on its own. It needs my glands to be activated, but it is capable by the strength of my will in acting on its own. Hetuna nena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. And simply by my will, it is working again and again. So Prabhupada says in the purport, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the supreme will and the background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated, and everything is created immediately. Because he glances over material nature, there's undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. This example is given in the Smriti. When there's a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person. This example actually comes in chapter 13. Yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There's a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. In summary, material nature, without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality is detached from all material activity. So here ends the second section of chapter 9. Now Krishna is going to describe the results for those who understand this knowledge and for those who don't. He's going to begin by those who do not understand this knowledge. Text 11, and this will continue for 2 verses, 11 and 12. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam majananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Translation.
Fools deride me when I descend into one's form. They do not know my transcendental nature and the supreme Lord of all that being.
So, avajananti, they deride me, thinking what? Manushim tanum ashritam. They think I have taken on the form of a human being, that I am one supreme Brahman and a formless being, and I have taken shelter of a specific form. Usually, impersonalists and Mayavad say that Krishna takes on a form in the mode of goodness. This is a big mistake. And Krishna calls them mudha, fools. Param bhavam ajananto. They do not know my supreme nature. Mama bhuta maheshwaram. As a supreme controller, supreme proprietor of all of this material manifestation. Because Krishna is the controller of Maya, and in the previous verse it has been stated that everything in Maya moves according to Krishna's superintendence. So even if Krishna comes in his own form to this world, there's no possibility of his being affected by it. Because in his own words, he is the Maha Ishwaram. He is the great controller, the greatest of all controllers. The difference is that here people neglect Krishna. In the spiritual world, regardless of the sense of relationship, everybody considers themselves to be Krishna's servant. Even when when Uddhava goes back to Vrindavan, he actually says, thinking of my son, I remember his lotus feet again and again. Now this is an unusual statement for a father to make, but underlying every rasa in the spiritual world is a deep sense of being a servant of Krishna. That's the first point. The second point is in the spiritual world, everyone is conscious that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But in Vrindavan, the speciality, this point is made by in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, but the special point is that the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes is so great that it drives that knowledge away. And the example is, like, for example, if your spouse or if Prabhuji was like the president of the United States, Prabhupada would give this example. You may know that he's the president, but despite his power, despite his position, when he comes home, you may still tell him, can you please wash the dishes? See, the sweetness of the relationship, it overrides your understanding of his position. So the point is, in Vrindavan, it is not that they don't know. I mean, the same personalities that come to this world, as Rupa Goswami, as Srila Prabhupada, and they teach us the same thing. So they are aware that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But it's just that, unlike in other parts of the spiritual world, in Vrindavan, the sweetness of the relationship is so great that it overrides that understanding. Another example that I remember my spiritual master gave was that when he was going, I don't know which city in India this was, let's say it's Bombay. So I think when he was going in Bombay, he happened to see two elderly people. One was the son, one was the mother. The son was like 60 years old. The mother must have been 80 or plus. And they were both on the street. They didn't have enough money for, they were beggars. They were sitting on the street. And the mother, even though she was very, very old, and her son was very old, she was still taking food and putting it in his mouth. Now, a 60-year-old, he knows he is 60 years old. He knows he may have children or grandchildren himself. But being fed by his own mother was still a rasa that was so sweet that in front of his mother, he's still a child. And that's what Krishna feels. Even for Krishna, he knows he's the Supreme Lord. But in front of the love of the residents of Vrindavan, he forgets. Or it overrides that understanding. That's the difference. So in Vrindavan, people never neglect Krishna. They are completely focused on him. And you give them any other alternative, they will never accept it. So they fully understand Krishna's position and they're completely fixed there. But there they're experiencing Krishna's direct, personal nature and qualities, which are part of his internal potency. Here in the material world, people see him as being material. They connect him to the material world. And they see him like, oh, he's just one of us. And in Vrindavan, they never, even though they say, oh, Krishna's just one of us, he's a cowherd boy. But still, they give prominence to Krishna. And that's the difference. Okay, text 12. So Krishna is going to describe the results for somebody who neglects him, who doesn't understand that his form, his name, his qualities, his pastimes are all transcendental. Moghasha moga karmano moga jnana vichetasah rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shritaha. Translation.
Those who are thus bewildered are attacked by demoniac and atheist spirit. In that delusion condition, their hopes of liberation, hopes for liberation, their fruitive activity, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated.
So this verse is actually really strong. Moga Asha, this refers to the devotees. Those who are practicing devotional service, but do so with a mistaken understanding of Krishna's real nature. Their hopes for liberation, their hopes for connection with Krishna in the spiritual world, they're never fulfilled. Moga means baffled. It is fruitless. Fruitless are the hopes of even devotees if they don't understand Krishna's transcendental nature. Moga karmano, those who are aspiring for some result in this world. It could be swarga, it could be some benefit in this world. None of their results are achieved if they understand that if they misunderstand Krishna's transcendental nature. Moga jnana, fruitless are the attempts of the jnanis or of the nishkama karma yogis to gain knowledge of the spirit soul if they neglect Krishna's transcendental nature. Understanding that Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes are eternal and transcendental is the essential requirement for every sadhana in Vedic literature. Understanding that Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes are transcendental, are real, and are the source of the impersonal Brahman. All of this is essential for any sadhana, ritual, or practice in Vedic literature. Otherwise, that ritual fails. What it means is that Vedic culture is highly theistic. It is highly personal. And it is focused on worshipping the personality of Godhead through different means and rituals, but focused on worshipping the personality of Godhead for success in anything. Otherwise, it's fruitless. And this also shows why Mayavadis actually are never liberated. Those who do not understand Krishna's eternal transcendental form never achieve liberation. Although if they perform faulty devotional service, offensive service, by considering that they're worshipping a temporary form or they're following a temporary process, they still get some result because of offensive service is still better than no service at all. But they don't get liberation. A real impersonalist is one who knows that Krishna's form is real. And they worship Krishna's form, but their desire is the impersonal Brahman. That is the impersonal Brahman form of Krishna is what they're attracted to. But they have to worship the personality of Godhead in order to achieve impersonal Brahman. And this is the verse that states that point. And Krishna goes so far as to say that those who neglect his form, they take on the qualities, maybe not the appearance, but the qualities of the Rakshasas and Asuras. In other words, an Asura is somebody who's basically atheistic in nature. Someone who is antagonistic towards the Lord No matter how religious they may appear, they are still trying to find a position for themselves in this world. It's still about them. If they neglect Krishna's personality, if they neglect Krishna's supremacy, then they come to a false notion of their own supremacy. And that's basically the nature of the Rakshasas and Asuras. Now, of course, depending on the level of degradation, level of envy they have over Krishna's form, to that extent they go into lower and lower species of life. This point is made in chapter 16. If you go to chapter 16, text 18 and 19. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger. This is page 632. Is everybody there? Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the body of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So this is the verse that can be read in conjunction with Mogasha Moga Karmano. Of course, Krishna had made the opposite point in, or rather the other, he had pointed out the other side of the equation for those who recognize his transcendental nature in 4.9, where he says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vedi tattvataha. One who knows in truth the real nature of my birth, my activities, they know that they are divyam, transcendental. Tyaktva deham punar janma neti. Giving up this body, they don't come back again. They achieve my transcendental nature. Mam eti, they achieve me. They achieve a transcendental position close to me. O Arjuna. So this point was already made in the beginning of the 4th chapter. Now the other side of the point is made in chapter 9 and later in chapter 16. That those who neglect Krishna's form achieve this particular result. So it is not enough to be moral. It is not enough to be religious. Real religion begins from recognizing the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is very common for people to accept a tradition like Buddhism. And the reason it is so popular is because Buddhism doesn't require recognition of a Supreme Lord. You don't have to follow anyone's orders. You can be spiritual, you can be moral. Or people understand yoga in a similar way. I have a Christian colleague, and she was just practicing yoga. Suddenly she came to me and she said, my friends say yoga is a method of connecting to the Supreme Lord in your religion. So does that mean I'm betraying Jesus if I'm practicing yoga and practicing asana? That was her comment. I mean, real yoga is actually meant to be connected to the Supreme Lord. That's what it really means. So she was right. It does connect to the Supreme Lord. The other part is a misunderstanding. But people take yoga as being just some kind of energy practice. And they're comfortable with dealing with energy. In fact, there's a conversation with Srila Prabhupada by Shyam Sundar Prabhu in, I forget the book's name. Is it Dialectic? What is it? Dialectic, where Shyam Sundar Prabhu was presenting various philosophies to Srila Prabhupada. And in that book, there's an interesting point made. He says, Shyam Sundar Prabhu says, or maybe it's Tamal Krishna Maharaj, they actually point out that in many traditions, people avoid recognizing the personality of Godhead because there's a fear. When there's a personality involved, you have to follow that personality's wishes. But if it's just impersonal light or just some wishy-washy thing, there's no person involved, then you don't have to be involved at all. It's just, it's just you can do what you want, and everything is good, everything is love, everything is just, you just be what you want to be, what you feel is right. But that's not real religion. Real religion begins when we recognize the personality of Godhead.
source a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, even to the point of yesterday, I saw there was a class that was being promoted, and it was yoga by the glass.
Yoga by the?
Glass. So they're practicing yoga and drinking wine at the same time. And I almost just fell off my chair. I was just like, oh my God. Because the process of trying to reach Sattva-guru through doing yoga is and you're drinking Thamistic wine at the same time. It doesn't make sense
No.
to do the two things hand in hand. But yeah, there's a trend of like intermixing this mindfulness, wellness, and new age spirituality with yoga, and then it's kind of become confused a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So now text 13 and 14 and 15 begin to describe what happens when somebody does recognize Krishna's nature. Text 13 and 14 refer to pure devotional service. Text 15 refers to a practice which is Jnana Yoga. Text 13. Mahatmanastu mam parta. Sorry. Mahatmanastu mam parta devim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso Jnatva bhutadim avyayam. Translation.
Those who are not living, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inconsistent.
The word Mahatma is really important. In India, the word Mahatma is given to anybody who people feel is great. But the real term of Mahatma, this is among the first times that Mahatma word is used in the Bhagavad Gita, and it is actually defined in this verse. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, when asked to define what Mahatma meant, quoted this verse. Mahatmanas tu means but, so it is in contrast to what was there previously. Mahatmanas tu mam partha devim prakritim ashritaha. They don't take shelter of their own mind or their own material conceptions. They take shelter of my internal energy because their minds have become broadened. Mahatma means a great mind, a broadened mind. Their mind has become broadened by a proper understanding of who I am. They've been trained by the association of devotees to understand that I am in everything and I'm separate from everything. And so understanding that their entire life is meant to be dedicated to me, they just give themselves to my internal nature. Mahatmanas tamam partha devim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso. Anya means others, ananya manaso, their mind is completely fixed. Jnatva bhuta adim avyayam. They know of creation, I am the origin and I am completely inexhaustible. I'm never inexhaustible in the sense that I'm never transformed or affected by material nature. Even though there's so much coming out of me, coming from me, they don't think that just like you take a piece of paper, you rip it up and you throw it everywhere. I am exhausted. The one piece of paper is exhausted into different pieces. Even though expansions come from me, even though universes come from me, I am still that complete whole. Understanding my transcendental nature in this way, they focus their worship completely on my person. So Prabhupada comments on the Mahatma in the purport. He says, in this verse, the description of the Mahatma is clearly given. The first sign of the Mahatma is that he is already situated in the divine nature. He is not under the control of material nature. And how is this affected? Meaning, how does one become a Mahatma? Or how does one start to take shelter of the internal energy? That is explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, at once becomes freed from the control of material nature. That is the qualification. And which verse in the Bhagavad Gita speaks about this? In the 7th chapter speaks about this? 7:14. Daivi hiesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya Mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. These three modes of material nature, they're very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it. And how does one surrender to Krishna? What is that specific realization? Vasudeva Sarvamiti, 719. So this is the description of the Mahatma. One who has been trained in this understanding. One who has realized 719 is able to surrender to Krishna and therefore take shelter of Krishna's internal energy. So Mahatmanas tumam parta devim prakritim ashritaha. They're able to take shelter of Krishna's internal energy, understanding in truth who he really is. So Prabhupada continues, that is the qualification. One can become free from the control of material nature as soon as he surrenders his soul to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the preliminary formula. Being marginal potency, as soon as a living entity is freed from the control of material nature, he is put under the guidance of the spiritual nature. The guidance of the spiritual nature is called Daivi Prakriti, divine nature. So when one is promoted in that way by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains to the stage of great soul, Mahatma. The Mahatma does not divert his attention to anything outside of Krishna. This is the phrase, bhajanti ananya manaso. Because he knows perfectly well that Krishna is the original Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. There is no doubt about it. Such a Mahatma or great soul develops association with other Mahatmas, pure devotees. Pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features, such as the four-armed Mahavishnu. They are simply attracted by the two-armed form of Krishna. They are not attracted to other features of Krishna, nor are they concerned with any form of a demigod or of a human being. They meditate only upon Krishna and Krishna consciousness. They are always engaged in the unswerving service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. Meaning that even the Jnana yogis do not fall under this category. Ashtanga yogis, Jnana yogis, even liberated souls do not fall under the category of Mahatmas. To be a Mahatma means to exclusively worship the Supreme Lord and not even be attracted to his four-armed form. Prabhupada says, what to speak of his Brahman form.
What about forms such as Jagannath and Lord Jagannath?
Jagannath is Krishna's form. Jagannath is Krishna's own form. It's Krishna's form in the ecstasy of hearing his Vrindavan pastimes. But
Even that Mahatma is the
yeah, of course. I mean, Lord Chaitanya worshipped Lord Jagannath. Yes. The point being made is that they are exclusively worshipping the personality of Godhead in a direct relationship. That is more the point. When the four-armed form is being referenced, it is like someone is worshipping Paramatma, someone is worshipping a form of the Lord from a more detached point of view. The point is, a Mahatma is one with a direct relationship with the Lord. That's the point being made. Text 14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridavratah namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. So here, for the first time, are the activities of such a Mahatma. Because a Mahatma is known by their qualities and activities. You can call just about anybody a Mahatma, but it's only really by certain qualities and activities that you can differentiate who is a Mahatma and who is not a Mahatma. It's also very easy to say that this person is sheltered under the internal energy of the Lord. I mean, that's a comment you can make about just about anybody. Very easy to say. But what are the actual symptoms of such an activity taking place? That's shown here. Translation.
always chanting my glories and endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion.
The word satatam is important. He is constantly worshipping me. Now, of course, for devotees who have just begun the process of Krishna consciousness, they can still be pure devotees. We've discussed this point previously. They can also be sheltered under the internal energy of the Lord. So satatam for devotees who are like sadhakas it's not possible to think of Krishna at every single moment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be conditioned souls. So satatam here means like regularly, daily also. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Such great souls, Mahatmas, are involved in constantly, or with their mind focused on me only. They're worshipped kirtayanto mam. Yatantascha dridhavrataha. With great determination. Their determination is not that, I will worship Krishna and there are still other things that I have to do. That reflects a weak determination. There was another verse similar to this in the 2nd chapter. It was that verse, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir, 244. Sorry, not 244, it was 241. 241. See, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir ekeha kurunandana. A person who's completely resolute. His intelligence is one-pointed. It is not many-branched. Dridhavrataha means their intelligence is one-pointed. It's pointed in the same direction. No matter where they go, what they do, they don't deviate from the fact, from this understanding that apart from worshipping Krishna, there's nothing else for me to do. Worshipping Krishna alone is sufficient to achieve every perfection. I don't have to perform rituals or things with my life that are separate from Krishna consciousness. Every problem I have comes down to Krishna consciousness. You can understand a Mahatma by whenever there's a problem in their life, they take shelter of Krishna by chanting about him, worshipping him. They will go back to the original source of real shelter, of real strength. They're completely convinced that here is my shelter. You know that sense of when you feel like you've come home? And it's just like, yes, now I can be myself. I can just relax. At the deepest level, a Mahatma feels at home in Krishna consciousness. No matter how much, most of the time when we go outside, we feel like we're expending energy. Like people are taking so much from us. When we go home, it's a place, Sanatana Goswami calls it Vishram Sthan. Vishram Mandir, that's what he calls it, Vishram Mandir. Like a resting place where you just feel energy. You just feel like completely at rest. For a Mahatma, when they are in the association of Vaishnavas or with Srimad Bhagavatam in hand or with chanting beads, they feel home. There was a post several years ago by His Holiness Devamrita Swami. He had been on a very hectic tour all over the world, and he had just come back to New Zealand. He had about a month or so to just rest, and it was quite a time for him. And so he said in that post, he was saying, do you ever feel like, enough with having to fulfill what everybody else wants? I just want to kick my shoes off and just be myself and, let my hair down and just relax. Well, I got to do that just today. I woke up early in the morning, no other commitments. I took my beads, I put my hand in my bead bag, and I was chanting happily, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. When I finished my rounds, I then went to the ultimate sense gratification. I took up a Bhagavatam from the shelf, opened the 10th canto, first verse, and I began happily chanting the Sanskrit verses. And I felt like I was home. But the great devotees, this is what a Mahatma is defined as. When Prabhupada, like sometimes when devotees would go into Prabhupada's room, because Prabhupada had numerous responsibilities all over the world, but when he wanted nourishment or he wanted shelter, he would just pick up his beads, or he was constantly Krishna conscious. And even when there was a quiet moment, sometimes devotees would look into his room and he would just be quietly sitting and reading a Krishna book. And he would look up and say, just see what I do in my own spare time. And in London, in the Tittenhurst estate, Prabhupada, normally he left 9 to 9:30 as the darshan time. But in the Tittenhurst estate, which was far away from where they were building the main temple in Seven Bari Place, so in that area, in John Lennon's estate, there was no visitor who came from 9 to 9:30. So right after Prabhupada finished breakfast, that half an hour, which he would give for darshan, he would just sit with a harmonium and he would be singing kirtan. And this is really what a Mahatma's life is like. And actually that instance is mentioned in Yamuna Mataji's book, Unalloyed, which if you haven't read it, it's really a must-read. But Yamuna Mataji used to cook Prabhupada's breakfast in that place. And after serving Prabhupada, she would be washing the dishes downstairs. And then she would hear the strains of the harmonium coming from upstairs. And she would be hearing Prabhupada singing kirtan. And Prabhupada would sing like one line, but not just like once or twice. He would sing it like 16, 17 times. And he would be going deep, and sometimes it wasn't just even one line, it was a phrase in the song. He would be singing it over and over and over again. Has anybody here been exposed to Indian classical music? There's something which is known as alankar, meaning that you sing one line and then you sing it again with more embellishments. You keep going deeper and deeper, and the purpose of this is to actually go deeper into the mood of the phrase being narrated. If you actually translate the song, it's just a few simple lines. But it's the raga and the melody which really draws out the mood and the emotions that come out from those phrases. And Prabhupada did that with the Vaishnava songs also. If we were to sing a song like Hari Hari Vifule Janma Gunayani, we could probably finish it in 5 minutes. Prabhupada would chant one line for perhaps 20 minutes or more. And he would be singing that one line, Vifale Janama. And he would just go on in deeper and deeper alankars. He would just go deeper and deeper into that phrase. And he would be so deeply absorbed in singing. And Yamuna Mataji would sit outside his door and she would just be crying silently. Because she realized that she had heard about saints before, but for the first time she realized that she was in the presence of one. Because Prabhupada's mood of absorption, depth of absorption in Krishna was so deep. And this is how a Mahatma is defined. And it is said that the tapestry of Yamuna Mataji's life was built of, the threads that she had taken from Prabhupada. One was kirtan, the other was deity worship, the third was to share whatever she heard. These were the three things that were intrinsic to her devotional life. And she took it from Prabhupada's association. Because Prabhupada himself was so deep in all of these things. But this is how a Mahatma is seen. And this is why we say that in the association, a momentary association with the devotee is so valuable. Because their sense of shelter in Krishna gives us a sense of, oh, this is what it is like. I see their Vishram Mandir, their temple of rest. And I want that same temple of rest for myself. I want to be fully sheltered in Krishna. Not going for service as kind of a chore or kind of some responsibility that has to be done or a duty. It's actually really funny. You go to some devotees, it's like, how was that service? It was a duty. I mean, have you heard some people say this before? It was a duty. I mean, it's like, I had to do it. It was a duty. I did it. But it's not like that. This is their actual shelter. This is why they wake up in the morning. This is why they live. This is why they breathe. And if they don't get an opportunity to serve, it's like, well, why am I here? Why am I living? Govinda Maharaj used to say this also. When he came in Australia, of course, in India, if you start a Bhagavatam class, you can go for 2 to 3 hours and nobody will stop you. Devotees will sit and listen. In temples in Australia, of course, there's a strict time constraint, particularly in those days when brahmacharis and brahmacharinis would go out for service and they'd be going for book distribution, Harinam, and there'd be a certain agenda. So temple presidents would, put a very strict time on the Bhagavatam class. So Gaur Govinda Maharaj came here and he would be asked to speak from 7:45 or 8 o'clock to 8:45, and very strict, 1 hour, 45 minutes. Bhagavatam class, and he would say, I feel like someone is putting their hand here and constricting me, because that's what it feels like. But I just can't speak about Krishna. And then there were times when, if there was he would go out of Orissa for certain functions and festivals to preach Krishna consciousness, like a Rath Yatra or something in a city nearby. And after preaching there, if there was one day of rest for the devotees, he would ask, okay, please drive me 4 hours back into Bhuvaneshwar, where his temple was, so I can give the morning Bhagavatam class. Because the day I don't speak about Krishna, it's like that day I don't get my oxygen. That was his feeling. See, this is the quality of a Mahatma. It's like that day I don't chant about Krishna, I don't hear about Krishna. It's like someone has cut off my oxygen supply. So when we say shelter in Krishna, this is the real quality of what it means. So satatam kirtayantamam, and the example of such devotees gives meaning to the word satatam kirtayantamam. The moment they get some free time, it'll be like going back to Krishna in some way. And it is sometimes said, and Kadama Kanana Maharaj once made this point, he said it is important for every devotee to have a proper Vishram Mandir in Krishna consciousness, because we all get burnt out in this world. We need to have that one source of shelter in Krishna consciousness. Could be many if we are very fortunate, but at least one source where we can just go. It could be sitting with a harmonium. It could be sitting with the Bhagavatam. It could be just associating with the devotees and hearing from them. Not chit-chat, but hearing about Krishna, or singing in kirtan with the devotees. Something, a taste, a hook, they call it in Krishna consciousness. It's really important to cultivate that and hang on to it, because that's what will help us go deeper and deeper and deeper. So satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhrudavratah, very strong determination. Namasyantas chamam bhakti, the head is always bowed down in devotion, always offering obeisances. Nitya yukta upasate, they constantly desire to be connected with me. One of the qualities of the stage of Bhava Bhakti is, I don't forget the exact Sanskrit, but it is a disinclination to waste even a moment of time. Raghunath Das Goswami, when he would be drinking buttermilk, like the time it took him to drink one glass of buttermilk, he would be crying tears. What am I doing wasting my time? I'm not worshipping Radha and Krishna. In that time, I'm not chanting Krishna's name. And that's what he would be thinking. Of course, that level is very high. But according to our level, from now until then, avyartha kalatvam, that's the Sanskrit. Avyartha kalatvam. There's a sense of, I don't want to waste time in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada was like that. Prabhupada also encouraged his disciples to come to that standard. Being in Prabhupada's association, we sometimes think it was, wouldn't it be so nice if we had Prabhupada's association? But Prabhupada's association was also really heavy, because in his presence there was no time to just kind of have our own time and space. It was that we had also to live to a certain standard. And devotees who once tasted that intensity could always go back to it when they could. But those who took that intensity and sustained it, they progressed very, very quickly.
I always had a question about that, because I feel like back then everyone kind of lived, or in that time people lived in communities or in the temple, and it may possibly be a bit easier to have that level of absorption.
Yes and no.
Because if you're kind of doing a mundane job in the outside world, like if I was to be like that in front of my clients, they probably wouldn't come back. Do you know what I mean? I have to kind of rein myself in, come around them and just pretend to be normal, I guess.
ISKCON has always been in a state where it's been trying to find a balance, because in the early days when people actually do need, if someone cannot completely dedicate their 100% time to the temple, they have to be Krishna conscious, but make their family life Krishna conscious. But it might have gone to one extreme where only temple life was prioritized and the other part of life was neglected. See, that is not necessary. That's a misunderstanding of Krishna consciousness. Now, in our congregation, we might have gone, not just but in general, people might have gone to the other extreme.
Yeah.
But Yamunacharya, when he was leaving this world, he gave instructions to his disciples. He said, always live near Ranganath, Lord Ranganath in Sri Rangam. Because when Yamunacharya was present, he had hundreds of thousands of Grihastha devotees, hundreds of sannyasi disciples, and many other brahmacharis. But for all of them, they had a certain arrangement in the quarters. Like you had the sannyasis staying in the ashram, and then you had the men, and then you had, I think, other like brahmacharis and I think married couples like that. You had certain structure within the city in terms of how it was planned. But regardless, the whole city was circled around Lord Ranganath. But if someone can stay in close proximity to a devotional community and have a center point of focus, then the fire of Krishna consciousness will always remain at home. Yeah.
You've got to chant 16 rounds, there's these standards, but it's like, okay, but how do you integrate that with outside? And
Yeah.
when there isn't the option to just live in a community now, we can't all just move to Moringa and live on the farm. Like, it's just not possible for some of us. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do you balance that?
Well, some devotees have done that quite well in places like the west of Sydney, where even though staying near the temple is not affordable, they've lived in an area where they come together to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, our lifestyle is such that it has become very difficult to stay centered in a community. One, it's very expensive. Two, people want a different lifestyle and stay in different places. But that was the principle, and how best we can form a community determines how nourished we all are as a congregation.
It says about us, I guess, and how well we can organise it.
Yeah, but it doesn't take more than two. I mean, Prabhupada made that point to Yamuna Mataji. When Yamuna Mataji and Dinatarani Matajis were both in Vrindavan, at 2 a.m. in the morning, they were sitting and chanting with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was just looking at one and then the other, one and then the other, one and the other. Then he just said, in the middle of their chanting, he said, "You always stay together and you practice devotional service well." They said, "But Prabhupada, we don't have much association." Prabhupada said, "Association can be 2 or 200. The question is one of compatibility. If the association is good and you're compatible, then 2 is sufficient." But it could also even be like Sachinanda Maharaj organizes chanting sessions via Skype also. But if the desire is there, then it will come to pass. What might be missing more is, for example, my desire, which is why shortfalls may be evident. So Prabhupada's purport to text 14. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, is not described as a Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or a human being. That is devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, and Smaranam, remembering Him. Now, somebody can ask, where in this verse is Shravanam mentioned or Smaranam mentioned? Well, it comes from the word cha. Satatam kirtayantamam yatantas cha. Cha means etc. It's repeated twice in this verse. So etc. means everything else in connection to these items of pure bhakti, meaning the 9 processes of bhakti. Such a Mahatma has a firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily and vocal, everything in the service of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. See, this is the ultimate result, the realization of these 2 verses, as a result of the knowledge mentioned in the 7th chapter and the beginning of the 9th chapter. This is the fruit, the mature fruit of that knowledge. Okay. Text 15. Now, these personalities, this practitioner is a Jnana Yogi. He's not a Mahatma. He's not a pure devotee. But he worships and recognizes the personality of Godhead. Here's the verse. Jnana yagyena chapyanye yajanto mamupasate ekatvena pritakvena bahuda vishvato mukam. Translation. So jnana yagyena, by the yagya, by the sacrifice, by the system of worship of jnana, so this refers to the Jnana Yogi. This is the only verse in the Bhagavad Gita that describes the sadhana of a Jnana Yogi in detail. Jnana Yajnena Cha Api Anye. So these are, Mahatma has been described. So Mahatmanastu Mamparta. Mahatma does this. And here Krishna is saying, yet others worship me through Jnana Yoga. So meaning that these were Mahatmas, these people are not Mahatmas. These are someone different. Jnana Yajnena Chapyanye Yajanto Mam Upasate. But they still worship me. And how do they worship me? Ekatvena Pritakvena Bahuda Vishvato Mukam. So there are three methods by which they worship me. Does anybody remember how we're discussing this in a previous class? Ekatvena means, so three methods mentioned here. Ekatvena, Pritakvena, Vishvato Mukham. These are indirect. Yes. Now, Ekatvena is also known as Aham Graho Pasana. What this means is Aham means I, Graha means accept, Upasana means worship. The system of worship where I accept myself to be identical to the Supreme Lord. So, does this ring any bells from previous discussions? So, Aham Grahopasana means that, okay, here is the Supreme Lord. They don't think I am God. That's not their idea. But they say, here's Krishna. He's eternal. He's a Supreme Brahman. And I am also an entity who is Brahman, eternally spiritual. What they identify with is with Krishna's spiritual nature. By identifying with Krishna's spiritual nature, they are able to understand themselves as being spiritual in nature. So we discussed that on the path of purification, if here's the state of complete conditioning, here's the stage of liberation. This is for the impersonalist. These practitioners belong to the first 6 chapters, by the way. So usually up to a certain point, they're more trying to get away from a material sense of I and mine. But there's some point at which they have to come closer to identifying with their spiritual nature as a spirit soul. So here they're running away from their false conception of I and mine. It's like they're trying to run away from, one end of the bridge. But at maybe the halfway point, they start to look at the opposite end. And they have to look to where they want to go. To understand the state of liberation, that where they want to go is to identify themselves as being spiritual in nature. They identify with Krishna's spiritual nature. And therefore, with that connection with Krishna, that they identify with Krishna's his quality of eternality. Krishna is Brahman, I'm Brahman, we are the same. That sense of identification allows them to develop that understanding of themselves as having an eternal nature. It's very similar to how when people have like role models at home, they usually have a poster of, say, for example, a sports player or an actor or an actress on their wall. They start to emulate their personality, and by association, through emulation, they're able to develop some of the qualities of that particular person. So here, by association, by that sense of identification, they're able to understand themselves better as being spiritual in nature. Pritakvena is where Pritak means different. They worship Krishna through his different opulences. So they see the sun, and they worship the sun as being Krishna's eye. They see Indra, they worship Indra as being Krishna's arms. So they're worshipping the different parts of this, different opulences of Krishna, but not separately. A demigod worshipper would worship the sun without understanding the connection of the sun to Krishna. But a jnana yogi, it's an abstract form of meditation because they don't directly worship the Supreme Lord. They understand that the Supreme Lord is eternal, but they also have this system of worship, understanding that Krishna's form is eternal. Vishvato Mukham. Here, it's not just one feature of Krishna's opulence they're worshipping. They're worshipping the entire universe taken together as being the universal form. So this is another form of worship that they conduct. Now, one of the underlying reasons they also do this is the reason Krishna is mentioning this right after he has spoken about his transcendental nature and form is because Jnana yogis know that Krishna's form is eternal and real. But what they're also trying to understand is that Brahman is everything, right? They know that the material world is real and it is Krishna's energy. But the conception they're trying to reach is that Brahman is everything. So by worshipping Krishna through these individual components, what they try to understand is that the personality of Godhead is present in all of these elements. He is the universe, he is his individual opulences, and he is me in our essential spiritual nature. By understanding this, they understand that everything is Brahman. The understanding that everything is Brahman is important for them to be liberated. Hence, they have this system of worship. Sorry, you had a question? Yeah, Aham Brahmasmi. Of course, it can also mean that I'm Brahma, I'm spiritual in nature. But that's typically used by impersonalists for that reason, yes. So, Tattvamasi is another one. Aham Brahma Asmi. And also Tattvamasi. That I am. Yeah, but not in the opinion of the devotees. This is the opinion of the impersonalists.
But that's getting, the last one is getting closer to where they present Supreme. They see it in the universal form.
Yes, but they actually, impersonalists prefer this. They think this is better. This is not as good. This is, yeah. I don't know which one's more difficult, actually. But someone who has actually practiced this would have to tell us that. But in the view of the impersonalists, this is the best sadhana, and this is a weaker form of sadhana in their opinion.
I don't understand what you're trying to say. When you say jnana yogis know Krishna's form is real, but their conception is Brahman is everything.
No, they want to realize that Brahman is everything because they're trying to lose their sense of identity, lose their conception of individuality, and reside in Brahman. So like we want to understand that Krishna is everything, they want to understand that Brahman is everything. So because they want to understand Brahman is everything, the question is how do they come to this understanding? The way they do that is they understand that Krishna is a supreme person. Understanding that Krishna is a supreme person, they identify with Krishna's opulence. They either identify with Krishna's his original eternal spiritual nature, or they try and see Krishna present in each of these opulences, or they try and equate the universe with Krishna. What they're trying to see is that Krishna is in everything. He's present everywhere, and so everything has an underlying spiritual nature.
But do they understand Krishna's form is real?
Yes, they do. And that was described in verse, was it? Mogasha Moga Karmano? That was text 12. If they don't understand that point, they never achieve liberation. Was this confusing or was this okay?
Sorry, and then you went to Aham Brahmasmi, which is I am Brahman, and Tattvamasi, what does that mean?
Aham Brahmasmi is I am Brahman. And Tattvamasi is that I am. So that's similar to the Ekatvena system of worship. That's what they're trying to do. So therefore, because these individuals are not directly trying for a relationship with Krishna in a personal way, they understand Krishna's eternal form, and in fact, the verse Moga Shamogo Karmano indicates that they practice hearing and chanting in their own life. They will read Srimad Bhagavatam, they will chant the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they could write commentaries also on the Srimad Bhagavatam. But they're not desiring an eternal transcendental relationship with Krishna. Therefore, they're not called Mahatmas. Yes. 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 Because because the Brahman is understood as the form of Krishna without qualities. Now, we might be attracted to Lord Nrsingadev, we might be attracted to Sri Ramachandra, but they're attracted to Brahman. And that's purely because of the association that they have had. If we are associated with a devotee or a spiritual master who's very attracted to Sri Ramachandra, that's the attraction we will get also. If we are attracted to a spiritual master who's attracted to Krishna and Vrindavan, that is attraction we will get. These practitioners have had the association of spiritual masters or people, other saints, who are attracted to the Brahman form of the Lord. And so therefore that's where their inclination goes.
The Mahatmas, are they doing like penance and austerity? It sounds like they're more into the mood of, the attraction for Krishna is like more of a joyful part. That's the things they like to do. Is that also part of the nine process of bhakti, that they practice austerity and penance, or they seem to be doing it out of their willingness or wanting to do it, the desire to be attracted. Is that part of it? Or sacrifice and penance? Because some people, they feel that it's like a duty to do that. They get closer to Krishna that way.
Yeah.
What drives them to do that rather than Mahatma, who doesn't necessarily need to? Or it seems like he's in a different way.
Lack of conviction in the power of bhakti. So the way the devotee does it is they decide on a particular way of worshipping Krishna. For example, they might say, okay, today's Ekadasi, I want to chant a certain number of rounds. Now, whatever sacrifices I need to make during the day in order to achieve that target, I'll make it. So austerity there is to facilitate bhakti. But for Jnana Yogis, it's like the austerity itself is a form of how I advance. Devotees don't have that misconception. Their advancement is through their hearing and chanting. And Jnana Yogis think, apart from hearing and chanting, I need other things in my life to also purify my heart or advance. So that's a lack of conviction in bhakti. Because sometimes, in the scriptures it is said, one chanting of Krishna's name is sufficient to give one liberation. If that is the case, then all you have to do is perfect the chanting of Krishna's names, right? You wouldn't have to do any of these things. But the fact that they do it means that they don't understand the value of bhakti. Yes, it has also got to do with the realization, if you open text 19 of chapter 7, and this is the key realization that actually differentiates the surrendered soul from the non-surrendered soul. Page 327. Bahunam Janmanam Ante, 719. So this verse states, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, going across several lifetimes, one who acquires knowledge. There's a particular form of knowledge that's referenced in this verse. One who acquires a specific realization. What is that realization? It's described in the third line of this verse. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. That actually Krishna alone is everything. So they might think, okay, I could have worshipped various demigods or I could have achieved particular results. Or, for example, people might think, I need to take shelter of a particular career in order to be happy. Or I need to take shelter of a particular situation in life to be happy. I need this for myself. But if they understand that it's actually Krishna's potency that gives this activity pleasure. If, for example, I'm attracted to how a person looks, it's because they have Krishna's potency. Because Krishna is originally ultimately beautiful. If I'm attracted to how intelligent or strong someone is, it's because Krishna's potency is there. And so Vasudeva Sarvamiti, it means Krishna is actually everything. If I'm attracted to willpower or the strength of someone's convictions, it's because it's Krishna is giving them that force of mind and that intelligence. But ultimately, what I'm attracted to is Krishna, because it's Krishna who has all these qualities. So one who's strongly convinced of this point understands that I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't need to do anything else. I just need to go to Krishna. So therefore, this verse is described as that verse which a spiritual master trains a disciple in. Spiritual master is defined as one who opens his disciples' eyes by allowing them, by facilitating their realization of this point. Because then they understand, I just have to worship Krishna. Okay, so okay, text 16. So now from text 16, 17, 18, and 19, Krishna is going to describe how he is actually everything in this universe. Because this is the realization that Jnana Yogis are trying to achieve. And Krishna himself is saying, I am personally everything in this universe. Of course, when devotees read this, they understand that if Krishna is everything in this universe, why not just worship Krishna directly? But here are the verses. Aham kraturaham yagya swadaham aham aushadam mantroham aham evajyam aham agniraham hutam. Translation.
But it is I who run the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering.
So Prabhupada says, the Vedic sacrifice known as Jyotishtoma is also Krishna. And he is also the Mahayagya mentioned in the Smriti. So here the Kratur, Hare Krishna, sorry, Prabhu, Mataji, can you please quietly sit down? There's a class going on. Just be very, very quiet, please. Please, no talking. Just be very quiet. So here Kratur is referred to as Jyotishtama, and here Yagya, Prabhupada refers to as Mahayagya. Swadaham aham aushadam, the oblations offered to the Pitraloka or sacrifices performed to please the Pitraloka, considered as a kind of drug in the form of clarified butter, is also Krishna. Swadaham aham aushadam, that's an explanation of aushada. The mantras chanted in this connection with this particular sacrifice or all the sacrifices is also Krishna. And many of the commodities made with milk offerings, milk products for offering in the sacrifices are also Krishna. The fire, aham agni, so aham eva ajyam. Ajyam refers to those sacrifices or those offerings in the fire. The fire, aham agnir, is also Krishna because Krishna is one of the five material elements and is therefore claimed as a separated material energy of Krishna. In other words, the Vedic sacrifices recommended in the Karmakanda division of the Vedas are in total also Krishna. In other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all the sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. Text 17. The oblations offered to the Pitraloka, is that sentence? So, because these are various Vedic sacrifices that are being referenced. So the phrases Kratur, Yagya, and Swada Aham, these refer to three types of Vedic sacrifices that are performed. So one is the Jyotishtoma, which is referenced by the word Kratur. There's another type of sacrifice, Mahayagya, which is referenced by the word Yagya. There's another type of sacrifice which is offering to the forefathers, which is referenced by the word svadha. Aham aushadam. So Krishna is saying that all these types of sacrifices that people would perform in Vedic culture, I am those sacrifices. Swadaham aham aushadam. So Prabhupada says that people offer this specific medicinal substance as an offering to the Pitris. So this aushadam in the second line of the verse refers to an offering to the Pitris. So that's how Prabhupada brings out the connection. Then Prabhupada says mantroham, that refers to the mantras that are chanted in any of these three yagyas. Ajyam, it refers to the particular offering. That melted butter is the translation that Prabhupada has. It is a particular offering that is offered into the fire. I don't know if that's just ghee or if it's melted butter. It's hard to say. But Prabhupada here says many of the commodities made with milk products, so it's more than just ghee. So it seems to be anything made out of milk or such milk products like butter, which is offered into the fire. And then he says, I'm the fire and I'm also the particular offerings into the fire, which might be the ghee. So the point here is that people here, like the Gyanis, they focus on, for example, Karmakanda rituals. But actually, it is I alone who am all of these things, so just worship me. Is one point is being made, but it's also connected to the previous verse of the Jnana Yogis, where they're trying to understand that Krishna is everything. Because they want to understand that Brahman actually is everything. That's the realization they need to achieve Brahman. So Krishna is describing that and enunciating the realization that he is actually everything. So text 17 continues this point. Pitaham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram omkara riksama yajurevacha. Translation.
I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandparent. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable O. I am also the Rik, the Sama, the Yajurvedas.
Why did you mention the Sarva?
Because that's indicated in the word cha. Cha means etc. So that's the Acharya's comment. So I am the father, I am the mother, I am the grandfather. Actually, in the Bhagavatam, you will notice verses where devotees actually pray to Krishna like this. You are our father, mother, friend, relative, guru. Has anybody heard these verses before? Where you actually worship Krishna that way. You are everything for me. And that's similar to what's being described here. Krishna is the object of knowledge, Vedyaham. I am the purifier, I am the syllable Om. I'm also the four Vedas themselves. The point being made here is that for those who are Gyanis, they can learn to see Brahman present in everything. For the devotees, they understand that ultimately they can just worship Krishna directly. Sorry? Yeah, exactly the same. Text 18. Gathir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Surit Prabhava Pralaya Stanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. Translation.
I'm the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most beautiful. I'm the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal sea.
I am Gati, the goal. I am Bharta, the sustainer. I am Prabhu, the master. I am Sakshi, the witness. I am Nivasa, the ultimate abode. I am Sharanam, the shelter. Suhrit, the most intimate friend. Prabhava, creation. Pralaya, dissolution. Sthanam, I'm the ground. Nidhanam, I'm the resting place. And I'm the imperishable seed. All of these things are me. Prabhupada says, Gati means the destination where we want to go, but the ultimate goal is Krishna, although people do not know it. One who does not know Krishna is misled, and a so-called progressive march is either partial or hallucinatory. There are many who make as the destination different demigods, and by rigid performance of the strict respective methods, they reach different planets such as Chandraloka, Suryaloka, etc. But all such lokas or planets, being creations of Krishna, are simultaneously Krishna and not Krishna. Such planets, being manifestations of Krishna's energy, are also Krishna, but actually they serve only as a step forward for realization of Krishna. To approach the different energies of Krishna is to approach Krishna indirectly. One should directly approach Krishna, for that will save time and energy. For example, if there's a possibility of going to the top of a building by the help of an elevator, why should one go by the staircase, step by step? Everything is resting on Krishna's energy. Therefore, without Krishna's shelter, nothing can exist. It could be that, or it could be that they never landed on the moon. They're both possibilities. And the idea is that, I mean, the Chandraloka is a place for pious people. And just as Prabhupada would make the point that if we were to try to go to America without green card, for example, we wouldn't be allowed. We would be quarantined and sent away. So it could be that the demigods have places in a particular location, like a quarantine bay. What is that in Guantanamo Bay in Australia? Guantanamo Bay in Australia, like a quarantine section. You don't actually see Australia. To be honest, Guantanamo Bay is like a hellish place in comparison to the rest of Australia. But it could be that we were quarantined like that, or it could be we never went there in the first place. But Prabhupada's basic point there was that the scriptures define the Chandraloka in specific terms. The fact that they have not seen that means they really didn't go there. It's kind of like if someone is in Guantanamo Bay, they haven't really gone to Australia. They can technically say, I put my foot there, but they haven't actually gone there. Text 19. Tapamyaham aham varsham nigranami utrajami cha amritam chaiva mrityuscha sad asachaham arjuna. Translation. It is a continuation of the same point mentioned in the previous 3 verses. You will see something similar to what Krishna says in the chapter Purushottam Yoga, that is chapter 15. If you go to verses text 12 onwards, text 12 up to text 15, where Krishna is saying, chapter 15. So this is page 604. Krishna says, the splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me, and the splendor of the moon, the splendor of the fire are also from me. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. I am seated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known, and indeed I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So in these 4 verses, Krishna is saying that I am Purushottama, the maintainer of every living entity. It is I alone who am the sun by which everything here takes on value, that activities are able to progress. I am the moon which provides vegetables. I am the fire which allows the digestion of these foods that you eat, which come from the moon, which is simply me, that you get energy for. So any endeavor that one has to perform in this world, it is by my support alone. And then in text 15 he says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Meaning that if somebody wants to enjoy in this world, it happens because of me. I help them forget previous experiences, I help them forget me. I help them forget their original constitutional position and allow them to enjoy. But if someone wants to remember me, then I am the Vedas, and I'm the original compiler of the Vedas by which they can also come to me. Whatever people want in this world, that is me. And that is similar to the point being made here in the 9th chapter. So for the Jnana Yogi, what they realize is that actually Brahman is in everything. The whole material world, it operates because of the presence of certain deities. It by sacrifices to acquire blessings from those deities. By virtue of the sun, by virtue of the various natural gifts that we have, by virtue of the society and the family support that we have. The Jnani sees that as Brahman is everything. That Krishna is equal to all of these things. But what the devotees do is they see that yes, Krishna is present in all of these things, but they also go one step further. That Krishna is also present as a separate personality. Rather than putting my energy in all of these things, why don't I just devote my entire life to him? And that is the point mentioned in these verses.
Is it at the beginning of the chapter you said that it's indifferent to the two?
Yes. Yes.
Connected.
Yes.
It's connected to it, but it's indifferent.
He's not connected to it. His potencies and he. Yeah. Mm.
But he's spiritual rather than being. The He says he's both spiritual and matter are in him, but
But then they're also not in him, he will say. Yeah. So the part where he says, I am everything, it's to emphasize that actually you should focus on me. The part where he's... Yes. Yes.
why worship all these demigods and all these
Yes.
other things that you can see
Yes.
relate to the matter and everything.
Yes.
Focus on Krishna and everything is encompassing.
Yes. And the part where he says, I'm separate from everything, it is worship me in a specific way. That is the idea. Hmm? Because it connects with everything of our experience. Because if we are dealing with sacrifices and rituals, we have to be able to see Krishna's presence in all of these rituals. This point is made in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, when Bharat Maharaj was performing these sacrifices for the benefit of his citizens. Bharat Maharaj himself was a pure devotee. But for the benefit of his citizens, he was performing these sacrifices so as to establish a Vedic culture among people who even wanted material enjoyment. But when he himself was performing these sacrifices, he didn't think he was worshipping the demigods. He understood that every component of these sacrifices were actually Krishna himself. And there's a very crucial verse that comes, I don't know the exact reference, but it comes, I think, in the 7th chapter of the 5th canto, maybe like verse 5 or something. It's a long phrase, but it describes his vision of the priest, the elements of the sacrifice, and everything else that surrounds that sacrifice. Yes, yes. We can apply these verses to our own life. I can say, my wife who's so sweet, who cooks so nice things for me, her potency comes from Krishna. My children whose sweetness I adore and whom I like to hug and kiss, their sweetness and tenderness comes from Krishna. The home which I feel so secure with, which I relish so much, that attraction is actually also, that sense of what I'm attracted to is Krishna. The ground, the bed, the memory foam which I feel so secure in when I sleep at night, that is Krishna. Not a metaphysical aspect, it is that Krishna is those elements. He's not only those elements directly, but the very sense of the potency that each of these elements have. They are Krishna's qualities. If I smell a rose and smell its fragrance, I'm actually smelling Krishna's sweetness. But it's also, yes, you can interpret it as being, it's kind of an abstract connection, but you will see in the 10th chapter that Arjuna requests Krishna to speak about his opulences, because what he wants to do is, okay, I understand Krishna, it's because your potency that's everywhere, but by meditating on qualities of things in this world, if I see a flower, I want to be able to understand how this quality reflects your nature. So you tell me about the flower. So you tell me that, for example, among all flowers, I am this flower. Then I will know by the fact that this particular flower is superlative in its particular quality. Particularly, for example, Krishna might say, I am the white lotus blooming in the middle of the night. This is considered to be the most beautiful sight in the world. When you see that, it's like, oh, I now can understand a little bit something of Krishna's original quality. Because we don't see Krishna directly. But when devotees see opulences of this world, they come to understand, oh, if the flower can be this beautiful, and this is the most beautiful flower among all flowers, I can understand that Krishna is the most beautiful among everyone. And that the tenderness, the sweetness, the sense of delicateness that exists in this flower are all Krishna's personal qualities. And it allows us an appreciation, even while we're in this world, of Krishna's qualities. And it's a way of connecting everything that we see in a real way to Krishna. Now,
Some rituals and trying to perfectly into instruction and get absorbed in it. That's also
rituals?
rituals or trying to do it perfectly, getting absorbed into it.
You're talking about the rituals mentioned here, like these sacrifices? Oh, this is for example, if the person is a karma yogi, or they're performing certain sacrifices which were traditional to Vedic culture, it would be to understand that actually it's Krishna alone who's the potency behind these sacrifices. So if they advance, or they realize it, they don't need to perform these sacrifices. They can go directly to Krishna. But even if circumstantially, socially, they're obliged to perform these sacrifices, okay, but here's a way by which you don't need to dilute the purity of your faith in me. You perform these sacrifices, but you don't feel like these rituals are what give the result power. What gives the result power is the fact that I am present there. And that's what gives you the result. That's the idea. Well, the first point is to train the intelligence. Because we are dealing with the world, we don't yet know how to feel for Krishna. So through this philosophy, our intelligence is trained. So we learn to look at the world in a real way. Because our perception of the world is colored according to our consciousness. To retrain that level of consciousness, we need knowledge. To be able to see things for what they really are. It's like, for example, I might be interpreting someone's reaction to me in a particular way. But if I'm told, no, actually look beyond that and see what they're thinking about, what they're going through, it allows me to see their response through the light of knowledge. So initially we begin to see through that vision, through the vision of knowledge. But once we see through the vision of knowledge and our perspective changes, we then are able to perform a particular type of sadhana that is conducive to actually acquiring that realization. So when we see it, oh, actually, no, that's what it is. It's actually not just an intellectual understanding anymore. It's realization. It starts with knowledge, but then moves to a deep-seated realization. Okay. Now, text 20 through to text 25. Krishna is going to speak about those who don't even recognize his supreme transcendental nature. And he's going to speak about those who worship demigods. Traividyamam somapa puta papa yagye rishtva swargatim prartayante te punyam asadya surendra lokam ashnanti divyam divideva bhogan. Translation.
Those who study the Vedas and drink to Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reaction, they take birth on the pious, heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights.
So Prabhupada says, unfortunately, there are many great scholars of the Vedas who do not know the ultimate purport of studying them, the Vedas. Therefore, Krishna herein declares himself to be the ultimate goal for the three Vedas. Actual three Vedas take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and engage in pure devotional service to satisfy the Lord. Devotional service begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and side by side trying to understand Krishna in truth. Text 21. Tetam bhunktva svargalokam vishalam shine punye martya lokam vishanti evam trayi dharmam anuprapanna gata gatam kama kama labante. Translation.
When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death.
So, sorry.